Hello, I'm back. Yeah, it's been a really long time since the last upload. I apologize, but this has been a difficult project. But it's done. I'm excited. It's finally done. This just a quick recap. This is the Volks Black Knight or Batshu the Black Knight or Batch the Black Knight, whatever you want to go off of, depending on what localization you're reading in the five-star stories. But this is from the Volks IMS series or Injection Mortar Head series, which is a series of five-star stories, mortar head model kits. And this is a kit that I got back in December, and it took just a long time to complete. Assembly is pretty difficult, and the kind of overall take I have on this kit is pretty similar to what I've stated before in the previous videos, is that this isn't really, unless you're maybe a little bit more experienced in model building, um, this might not be a good idea to pick up this kit. I wouldn't recommend this to anybody who isn't like a more die-hard five-star stories fan, because this is a pretty complex, or maybe not complex, but difficult build. As I mentioned before, it's not a snap fit kit. The only thing that this has really in common with a lot of modern mecha model kits is that it's molded in color. And it's not fully color accurate, really, either. So the idea, I think, was that they still expected you to paint it to some degree. I would certainly say that if you're going to get this kit and you want it to look its best, I do the full paint job. I mean, that sounds like a no-brainer with most kits, but I mean, like, your average high-grade kit, um, like, for comparison, like, whoa, here's our 1/144th scale Red Gundam from G-Quux. These are in the same scale, by the way, so yes, mortar heads are definitely bigger than your average mobile suit. But this kit looks pretty much as it should out of the box. You know, I did some panel lining and replaced some of the stickers with paint, but for the most part, this looks like a finished product um, with just a regular build. This does not. And this does not really reflect how it appears in its description with unless you do a full paint job. Now maybe as I'll kind of get into here, you might be able to get away and make this thing look a little well, actually a lot better with a gloss coat. Just a can of gloss coat. Yeah, this thing will look really good, I think. Um Definitely will match the work on the box art much better. I would compare, but I've already gotten rid of the box just to make space for other things. Because the backlog is just growing, and I'm having a hard time keeping up with it. But uh, now the part though that took the longest and was the most frustrating wasn't actually the kit necessarily itself, but the process of. Oop, that might be coming loose. Yeah, the arm just came off. Okay. Was the process of doing the chrome plating for the swords. And yeah, as you can see, this arm just popped off. This is one of my major gripes with this kit, is that the joints, the articulated components, are kind of fragile. They tend to not want to stay together, and some of them I've actually just physically glued in place because I just didn't want to deal with them. Mainly the hips, some of the arms, and the base of the shoulders are all glued in place because it just was not working. I honestly, like just can't really recommend this to your average, maybe more casual Gunpla or just model kit enthusiast. This is something that will test your patience quite a bit, as it has mine. Even manipulating this and just getting it to stay in a nice stoic pose can be a little bit tricky. Hence why on all the box art this thing is stationary, because while it is articulated, it's certainly not really intended to be very dynamic. And when you try to pose it and do things with it, it will kind of just fall apart, which is why I'm trying to avoid touching it as much as possible. As you saw, the arms just love to fall off. Most of it's in the upper torso is the issues I have. But I don't hate this kit. Like I said, the most difficult part was not necessarily the assembly, but was painting these swords with the Molotov liquid chrome. Now, to kind of give you a brief rundown, I think I explained this a little bit in the post I made. The Molotov liquid chrome is a really cool. They only, as far as I know, they only come in paint pens. Like this. This is a Molotov liquid chrome, I believe. Ooh, focus doesn't like it. Oh my gosh. This is a Molotov liquid chrome mirror effect 2mm. I love technology. 2mm paint pen with a round tip. These are pretty cool. They work the same way if you've ever used a Gundam marker. It more or less works the same way, where you have to push down to have the liquid chrome flow into the tip. But this stuff is really great, but only in small areas. And the areas I use it, like on the arms and parts of the leg, I think it worked out really well. But when you're trying to paint this whole sword with just that paint pen, that's where things get kind of hairy. To make a long story short, more or less, I had to paint, strip, and paint over and over, just because what was happening is anytime I made contact with the actual liquid chrome, like painted piece, it tended to just permanently have my fingerprints laid into it. Like even the slightest touch. And this was after curing for over 24 hours. So I did some research. Turns out sometimes it can take a couple weeks, depending on how many layers you've put down of this liquid chrome, which I've done 3 or 4 on the swords. And my initial thought was the solution must be, I just need to clear coat these so that I can handle them without like permanently fingerprinting the sword. That's where my next issue came in and why I had to strip and repaint these things so many times. These things really, the liquid chrome really does not like clear coat, or at least the clear coat that I was using. I tried first an acrylic-based Vallejo airbrush ready varnish, clear varnish gloss. Would not stick to the sword at all. It just kind of beat it up and looked really bad, and then I had to strip and repaint. I then, went back to my local hobby store, talked some shop with the guys there, and was like, I'm having a hard time with this. I'm just kind of at an experimenting phase here with these swords. And they were like, well, just have you tried, flat coating it and then gloss coating it? And I was like, okay, yeah, we'll give that a shot. So I bought 2 cans of Tamiya clear coat, which is usually what I use for any clear coating, flat and a gloss. And I took I cut up 2 bits of sprue and runner, put them on my paint stand, clipped them in, and just did a test where one I did a layer of flat coat, the other I did a layer of just the clear coat only, like gloss clear coat only, and then I was going to see what would happen. Well, the long and short of it is that the liquid chrome immediately reacted with the clear coat. And it's most obvious with his sword here on his shield. It's not chrome anymore. It's more of just a metallic kind of gray color. It literally, the best way I can describe it is it looked like it just melted the chrome off and just like discombobulated it. And there were 3 swords that came with this kit, and I've only used the 2 because the third one looks so bad I just threw it away, because it looked like the chrome had just been melted away and it was just gray gloop that was just unevenly spread all over the sword, and I was just like, I'm not really putting up with it. That, and there isn't really anywhere to put a third sword on his, on this kit, without him being configured to have the hands that are in sort of like, I could kind of try and demonstrate like this sort of pose where his hands are out, just kind of so that you can pose him where he has the sword resting on its blade and he's just got his hand resting on the hilt, and then he's propping up his shield with the other hand. I opted not to use those and instead used the held weapons. And by the way, the reason I haven't removed or like pulled the sword out of his hand to show you more details on it is that it had to be glued into his hand. It doesn't hold the sword without it being glued into the hand. There's no pegs, there's no tab or slot connection. You have to glue it. Same thing for storing this sword inside the shield. That needs to be just permanently glued into that scabbard. Otherwise, it just falls out or off. And so that's what I did. Along with a lot of the joints, which I just use super glue on the joints where the polycaps make contact, because the polycaps are just not really that great. And this kit, again, was very clearly not intended to be a super dynamic articulate kit. The box art even just only shows it in very stoic poses, and this is just one of the poses I tried to match on the box art. As you saw, anytime I move some parts on the arms, they tend to fall apart. I may glue the arms in place just permanently as well, but I do like to make some adjustments to it. But yeah, what really held this whole build process up was the fact that you just have to, it's not snap fit. Everything has to be set and glued in place and then held in place in the exact spot you want it so that it lines up. There isn't anything to make sure that all the parts are aligned correctly and fit correctly. You have to just hold it in place and glue it and hope that it stays there, and that when it cures and is dry, everything is where you want it to be. Again, also, bare minimum work you need to do if you want to get this kit other than gluing is you need to paint his eyes. They're a little hard to see even in real life. They're very dark. I'm not sure how, like, on all the box art, his eyes are very prominent and just kind of piercing. Even in real life, I can't even get him to, they're very difficult to see. I don't know if maybe they just use some special lighting for the photography, or maybe the paint they used was a bit more like vibrant. I'm not sure, but you do need to paint his eyes, although you might be able to get away with it now that I think about it when you can barely see them anyway. I did do some panel lining. You can see it vaguely, mainly on the shoulders and red sections. I did panel line the hilts of the swords. It's a little tricky to see. The camera doesn't really like focusing on these. Hello? It's most obvious there. It's very subtle too. The black, his arm came off again. The black paint or the black wash doesn't really stand out too much against the red background. And you can see this polycap just loves, these shoulder polycaps love to come undone, which is really annoying. Really, really annoying, and I'm probably just going to glue all of the joints in place because it's just frustrating enough, and I just want him in this pose. That's all I need. He looks great, though. So, again, overall, final kind of thoughts and sentiments on this kit are I would not recommend it for most people. If you're a really diehard 5-star stories fan, I would say this is probably the better alternative to the older, very old wave kits. But this is still an old kit. Even though this is a newer version of this kit, this is a scaled, I'm fairly confident this is just a downsized mold of the mold from the 1/100th scale kit, which is fairly old, like 2008, or like early to mid to late 2000s, I would say, at the latest, is when that kit came out. And even then it was kind of low tech compared to some other stuff that even Bandai was coming out with. But if you are a diehard 5-star stories fan, or like me, or you just love Mamoru Nagano's design work, I can recommend this, because a lot of these people are in that community are very used to this type of thing, because this is kind of all we have for these sorts of designs. The shoulders are movable. The shoulder armor is movable. Shoulders are movable as well, but I wouldn't recommend doing it. Now, what I do want to do is compare him, though, with some other Nagano stuff. I did bring him up in a previous video, and I think now that the kit is finished, it might be fun to just sort of have these two side by side. Ooh, come on. So here he is with the Ryobot L game, which is, I believe, is a 1/100th scale figure. So he's much bigger. I'm gonna pan the camera up here just a bit so you can kind of see. Yeah, definitely a good bit bigger, but the design language, I think, really carries through. Oh dear, please don't break on me. Another kit that just has weird balance problems. A lot of Nagano stuff does, because he loves the high heels. I already showed you with the G-Quux Red Gundam. So another 1 to 1/44th scale kit. Here is just your regular 18 meter tall as well. Here it is with the regular HG G-Quux. Again, you can see that these are... mortar heads are pretty sizable. I'm sure there are definitely mobile suits in the Gundam universe that are about the same size as a mortar head. Probably in the 20-25 meter range. Like maybe something like the O. That's a big one. Sazabi maybe even. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else I can compare it with. Here's just a regular MG Gundam kit. This is the Turn A 18 meter mobile suit in 1/100th scale, and you can even see then, again, I'll pan the camera up here. I would say it's definitely closer in size to 1/100th scale kit than a lot of your high grades, but it is a 1/144th scale kit. Ooh, dear. Just trying to put things back is tricky. But yeah, that's kind of more or less all I really have to say about this guy. I'm really glad that I went out of my way to build him. I think it was a good test, just kind of challenge. A lot of these kits are pretty straightforward to put together. A lot of high grade kits. It's nice. Weirdly enough, it's kind of nice to have a change of pace in this sort of sense, where you have this project that doesn't feel nearly as like instantaneously gratifying as some of these other model kits that you can knock out pretty quickly. And having something to work towards is really nice. Speaking of which, I do want to tease something. I've shown this kit off since it's the only other Volks kit I own, but I am currently working on it. I am building the 1/100th scale Volks Temjin. I'm really happy to say that I think I finally, after having this kit just travel with me in box from places I've moved back and forth. I've had it since high school, so yeah, 10 years. I'm really excited because I finally feel like I've developed my painting, my hand painting and brush painting skills enough that I've actually been making some really good progress on that kit, and I've been able to get pretty far on it. And so that's probably, when it's done, I'll definitely do a video on that, and we can talk a lot about Virtual On. It's a game series that I'm not as familiar with, but it is my favorite Dreamcast, or one of my favorite Dreamcast games, is Virtual On Oratorio Tangram. Love to talk about that, but I'm going to save that for when it's done, and I'll also maybe, depending on how things turn out, I may have a completed figure or toy of another Virtual On, or a similar Virtual On mecha that I can compare it to. I think it'd be an interesting experiment. As far as what's coming up for the next video and such, it's going to be something very different again. It's already finished too, so I'm just kind of I say already finished. I'm just kind of putting the finishing touches on it and getting things squared away. The Eltimus, yes, I know. I teased that kid a while back. I will probably do a video on that very soon as well. I haven't been able to get around to painting that just because the airbrush and the weather currently have not been compatible, at least for me and my setup. I did get a new type of airbrush. I may talk about that and review that, uh, depending on how that goes. But I think most of my airbrushing is gonna have to wait until warmer weather. But for now, like I said, I do have something lined up that's finished. I've already assembled it off camera. It was actually a really quick build. Uh, really excited to talk about it, but I just gotta do some finishing touches on it, and it should be good to go. But that's all I really have for you today. Uh, I hope you're doing well and having a good New Year. I'm gonna go now and think about my custody battle that's coming up and my upcoming court appearance. Bye.